Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the OT is In podcast. Today, I am thrilled to introduce you to Janine Halloran. She is a licensed mental health counselor who has been working with children, teens, and their families for over 20 years in building their coping skills. She's written several books, including the best-selling Coping Skills for Kids workbook and Coping Skills for Teens workbook. She's also the host of the Calm and Connected podcast, which, if you want to hear more of our conversations, hop on over there today because you can hear us on her latest episode as well. You know, I recently had a parent tell me that she wonders if the emotional control aspect of executive functioning is negatively impacted by the digital age or by the environment of educational choice, meaning brick and mortar schools versus homeschooling. Well, Janine was the person to ask. In this episode, we talk about coping skills development, the influence of the environment, and most importantly, how to support our kids. So whether you're a parent, an educator, or someone interested in supporting kids through big emotions, this episode offers valuable insights into how we can better support the uniqueness of every brain. So now, on with the show. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you about a new resource from Homeschool OT. If you homeschool, you've probably heard the question, but how do you socialize your children? Now, this may automatically put you on the defense, but in reality, most people asking are trying to understand our community. As I've learned from studying debate with my kids during our homeschool, one of the best ways to have a discussion is to be sure that we have the same definitions. And the truth is, social skills are about more than just being around other kids. They rely on executive functioning too. Skills like planning and self-regulation and flexible thinking directly shape how kids take turns, read social cues, and build friendships. And as with any skill set, like for example, motor skills or cognitive skills, some children develop more naturally than others. And that's why I created a free guide just for you, Social Skills and Executive Functioning, an OT Perspective. It defines the executive functioning skills and their relationship to socialization or social skills. And it gives some tools that you can use to support your children. You can download it today at homeschoolot.com or through the link in the show notes.
For families. Seriously, if you go on their website, there is so much there for families to really work through coping skills with their children. So first, before we dive into, the topic today, Janine, can you just give us a little bit of history on yourself and your journey to how you got to this point?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So I have been a counselor for, I can't believe I'm about to say this, over 20 years.
Yeah. Good stuff.
It's wild to me that that's been my life. I work with kids, teens, and families working on coping skills. And it's always been, when I was younger, I actually decided I wanted to be a therapist when I was in high school. So I went straight through and did all of that, and it was phenomenal. And one of the things that I did as a school counselor, so I graduated, I went to work in schools in different other locations and settings. And I have this very vivid memory of one of my principals asking, what do you want to do with the kids that are in our building? We've got 400 fourth and fifth grade students. What do you want them to focus on when they're working with you? And it took me a minute, but I sat there and I said, I want them to all learn coping skills. I want them to be able
Wow.
to figure out what skills will work for them. I want them to manage their big feelings, challenging moments, situations with friends in safe and healthy ways. That's what I want for all of them. And so that became the foundation of my counseling at that school. And then it became the foundation of my job in terms
Yeah.
of like creating system, creating workbooks. And, I started off like creating a coping skills checklist, and that came about organically with some girls that I was working with. And then I wrote the coping skills for kids workbook, and then people were like, I need visuals so that I can help remind my kids of the strategies in the moment. And so I created the card decks. It sort of grew and blossomed organically, and now here I am, like several books in, activity books, card decks, all sorts of things. But still, at the heart of it, I really want kids and teens and adults to learn
Yeah.
coping skills. That is the basis of what I do. I want people to learn how to manage the tough moments, awful things, big feelings, challenging situations, overwhelming thoughts, stressful moments in life, stressful periods of time in life, in healthy ways, in safe ways, and in ways that are going to be helpful to them and not harmful to people around them and not harmful to anything around them as well.
I think my favorite thing that you said there is, my helpful to them specifically, because coping, one person's way of calming their nervous system, calming their body, whatever, being able to cope with big feelings might look different than somebody else's. And I think that's what I love the most about your work is that you have so many different options. It's not like there's one right way to handle big things. So before we keep going on, can you just define that term coping skills? Because I think there are so many different ways that people look at how we handle big things going on around us.
Yeah, so the way my definition of coping skills, it is strategies that we use to deal with big feelings, overwhelming thoughts, stressful situations. So you're dealing with day-to-day life, you're dealing with big challenges in your life. What are the skills that are going to be useful to you in those moments? Now, people can divide it into like healthy versus unhealthy coping skills. So that's why I really like to emphasize I want to help people find healthy and safe coping skills because there's plenty of coping skills out there that you could look at as unhealthy. And so the example I always use for like little kids is like you can have really big feelings when you are playing Legos with a sibling or a friend. It is not okay to knock down their Lego tower when you get mad at them. Like it is
Right.
just, that's not cool. Like you can't do that. So what can you do if they are doing something that you don't like? You can use your words, you can be able to label your feelings. There's lots of other things that you can do. You could take a break that are healthier ways to deal with it. So like knocking down a Lego tower is totally a strategy, right? It's unhealthy and it's like not
Yeah.
safe. It's not cool. And it's like going to hurt your friends potentially or your siblings. So you don't like want to do that. So you could do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You might feel better afterwards, you too, but it's not a strategy I want to be emphasizing with kids. I want to find a strategy that's going to help them, that's going to be healthy and safe.
Yeah, we in my house say a lot like your needs are important, but they're not more important than somebody else's. So like your need in that moment to knock down the Lego tower, I mean, that is actually important because your need right there is telling your body and your brain, what is going on. It's how you're coping. But that then made your need more important than somebody else's because then now they have no Lego tower either. And that's not fair.
Yep, it's not fair.
That's not fair. So let's back up a little bit as far as like developmentally, because you said that that's your example for little kids, right? And there are like both some cultural norms and developmental norms in regulating our emotions and coping with these big feelings. So can you kind of talk a little bit about what parents should expect at different ages and stages?
Oh, sure. So the thing is, I think about it along a continuum as we are growing up, but also like how much are we able to handle? Like, think about when you're little, you might be experiencing like frustration, grief, anger for the first time. And like that is really hard. As an adult, it's hard to deal with grief. But like imagine as a little kid. Like it's new. The feelings and sensations in your body are new and different, and you're not really sure what to do with them. So it is okay that like especially when kids are younger, their emotions are bigger, their feelings are bigger, their expressions of emotions are bigger, right? So like it is big when they are little, and what we expect to happen is over time those reactions and emotions will become a little bit less intense as they get older. I also like to keep in mind and have people keep in mind developmentally in terms of brain development. The times where your brain grows the most, there are two times: when you are a toddler and when you are a teenager. And so it's like the teenage brain and the toddler brain in some ways look very similar. There's lots of fits and starts. So like when your toddlers are waking up and they learn new words or they have new skills that they didn't have the day before, which is always like super cool to see, right? So that's their brain like making new connections, building. But then there are going to be times where it's harder for them to emotionally regulate, where it is like the feeling of frustration is very overwhelming in that moment. So the same thing happens with teenagers. They're just bigger. Stakes are a little bit higher when they're teenagers, but it is, again, sometimes they wake up and they're able to problem solve and make good decisions and figure things out on their own and do a lot of planning and executive functioning skills, right? And other times they wake up and their amygdala is in charge and it's all about the feelings and all about the emotions and it's big and it's overwhelming. So know that inconsistency and that uncertainty and big changes day to day will happen, especially when they're teenagers and toddlers. So I just like parents to recognize.
So when you're saying that, because I have had parents be like, I know that they could do this, whatever it is that, they're trying to say that because they've done it in the past. So can you kind of talk about that a little bit more? Like, why would there be differences day to day?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's so interesting because it depends on their own sort of like regulation. So and it just depends on like their mood, how much sleep they've got, how stressed out are they, or how overwhelmed are they for the teenagers, especially like all the expectations and things that they are having to do. For little kids, life is overwhelming. Like everything is new. Everybody's telling you what to do. It's very frustrating as a little kid.
It is.
Like it's like your life feels limited. You're like, all I want is cheese and to go to sleep. Why would you make me do that? Like, I feel that.
Same. I actually would love those two things as well.
Right. But they just say it out loud because they have no filter. And I appreciate that about toddlers.
I agree. I agree. It's actually really interesting. I mean, obviously I would know this, but it didn't come to the forefront of my mind until you said, like, there are times that they're feeling emotions for the very first time in their lives. And like, we get to be privy to that experience, just like we get to be there for the first smile and first steps or whatever. But I guess I just hadn't really thought about how overwhelming some of these intense emotions would be if they've never felt them before.
Right. Well, and being able to label it and name it when they're that little for them is really helpful. Like the first time they feel sad, like that's really hard. Like when they really are able to understand like there is sadness in their body. It's neat to be able to help them come to that realization. And I talk about this all the time with families. Like you can really start very young with kids talking about like sad, mad, happy, and just putting that into your vocabulary of the day, like talking about it while you're reading books, talking about it while you're watching TV shows. Bluey feels a lot of feelings. So does Pigeon, and Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus, and all the Mo Willems books. Like all of those characters have really big feelings, really big feelings. So
purposefully, I think. I mean, know that we can have these conversations. That's half of a Chameleon Tale is for that exact same reason, to be able to have these conversations with our kids. And we know like books and TV and, all of these examples in our surrounding world can, literally change lives if it allows us to have these open conversations. We're going to pause for 1 second so I can tell you about our sponsor for the month of October. Now, we have used CTC Math in our homeschool for 4 years now, and it continues to be one of the highlights of our school day. My kids actually look forward to the lessons, especially when they get to echo, "That's all for the lesson. Good luck with your questions."
Guys, I can't do it, but they do it in their best Australian voices. But what I love most is how CTC Math adapts to each child. For example, my youngest flew through addition. He just got it. So we were able to speed things up and keep his momentum going. But when we hit subtraction with borrowing, we needed a little extra time. And with CTC Math, it was simple to slow the pace down, give him the practice he needed, and build his confidence before moving forward again. That's what makes CTC Math so unique. You can move at exactly the right pace for your child. Fast when they're ready, steady when they need it, and if you've been thinking about a math program that works with your child instead of against them, October is the perfect time to check out ctcmath.com. And while we are spotlighting CTC Math this month, don't forget our brand new Executive Functioning for Teens course is also open. It's all about helping teens strengthen the 11 brain-based skills that they need to manage their day and succeed in what matters the most to them. You can learn more about that at homeschoolot.com. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to this awesome conversation. I hope that you are having some aha moments as far as thinking about your kids and their emotions and then how they cope with them. Janine, let's dive in a little bit to our changing environment now, because the environment can play so much into how our kids are able to cope, right? Are you seeing differences with coping skills now in our digital age?
I am. And I think part of it is that, especially for those kids who have grown up in a more digital age. So my kids are they're at the strange position where they like had it, but didn't really because they're teenagers now. They're like late teenagers. So like 17, 14, 15. So they kind of grew up with it, but kind of didn't. Like we were just getting to have all of these things become digital and online. So it's like a different language. Like you have the social skills that you have in person and the strategies that you use in person, but then you have to have a whole different sort of way of communicating and understanding via text, via chat, via video calls. Like it's just a very different way. And so when I talk with families about this, it's like you have to know our kids, and we do too, but our kids have to know like two different ways of interacting with people. They have to be able to interact online, but then they also have to be able to interact in person. And I think part of it too is like, how do you emotionally regulate when things get too upsetting or frustrating or overwhelming or ragey during a video game? What do you do? How do you really work in and step in and help them recognize, like, okay, you're feeling it too much in your body. So then if you know that you are having that emotion, what can you do? Like, do you need to take a break? Do you need to step away? When does gaming become not fun? Like, that's the whole,
Yeah.
I talk about that a lot with my young men, especially. And I'm like, is it fun anymore? If you're yelling and screaming and
Right.
throwing things, is it fun? Like, I thought the whole point of playing video games was fun. If it's not fun, don't do it. Like,
Yeah.
and really reflect on that. And then social media is so interesting because there's so many ways that kids can interact and for good or for ill in terms
Yeah.
of being able to interact nicely versus leaving people out or talking about people online or doing all this stuff. And I actually always come back to like, how does it feel in your body? Does it feel good to look at Instagram for like 30 minutes? Does it? Does it feel
Right.
great or do you need to take a break? And just to bring that awareness to them so that they can start to understand, like, how does this impact how I'm feeling? How does this impact how I'm thinking about myself? Is this a feeling that I like? And are there things I can do offline that can
Yeah.
really fill me instead? So I do a lot of work with talking with kids about like, what is your interaction with screens like? And this is something else I talk with parents about too, is like, every child has a different interaction with screens. So like even within families, like my own family, like my son will do more like gaming and online stuff, but not as much like on Instagram or social,
Mhm.
like not into that. My daughter does a little bit more social, but like not Snapchat, like so you have to get into, okay, what is it that they are watching, consuming? What are they interacting with? And how are they feeling when they're doing it? So you have to keep these lines of communication open so you understand what is exactly going on for them. And does it fit your family's values? And
Yeah.
just leave having that conversation of, okay, what is this helping you feel? What is this doing? Does this fit with what we want as a family? Does this fit with what we are wanting to instill in you? So,
I love that question of that. Does this fit with what we want as a family? And what is this, what is this instilling in you? I think that's sometimes really hard for kids to recognize, especially those, in this younger, I have older teenagers too, but then I also have a 10-year-old. And so it's been really interesting with him, especially having his older brother and sister already having phones and things. Like he's pretty much grown up in this world. But we do a screen fast every year for 3 weeks. It was based off of Dr. Victoria Dunkley's book, Reset Your Child's Brain. And she was actually on the podcast. I'll make sure that that is linked in the show notes. But for him, there was a lot of things that I was saying to him, like this, I can see a difference in your body. I can see a difference in, even your shoulders are up, your head's, tight, your fists are clenched, and your ability to like interact with us at breakfast, things like that I could say to him, but he wasn't realizing it in himself because he doesn't know his brain not on screens.
ah,
And so then when the screen fast is like 2 weeks total, the beginning is kind of we were talking about it, gearing up for it, whatever, and then 2 weeks. And it's been really interesting. We did it 2 years in a row. The
mm,
second year or the first year, he came off and was like, I don't want to watch screens in the morning anymore because he realized himself his differences. And he's not, I mean, this has been well over a year now, and he does not watch anything in the morning. If I had told him that, I mean, that wouldn't have worked, right? It wouldn't have worked. It was like one of these things he had to be autonomous in that decision. And then now this year, he noted a difference in like when he watches YouTube shorts or things that are like really fast
yeah.
versus if he even watches a whole show. And these are things that he realized because he didn't have them and he
Right.
recognized his own brain.
Right. And it's that self-awareness, but then also the control that he has within himself to make the decision. Because you could absolutely say you shouldn't watch YouTube shorts
Yeah.
because it really impacts how quickly, like it doesn't feel great with your brain, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. It seems like it doesn't work in the morning for you to do this, right? But for him to come to those decisions on his own after recognizing and having the conversation, much more powerful. So
Yeah.
it'll stick versus you saying don't do it and he's trying to sneak it.
Yeah.
But he's like, no, I actually know that it doesn't feel good, and
Yeah.
so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. But it's like those coping skills, of him being able to stop the
Yep.
situation. He wouldn't have had that had he not been able to remove the whole situation and really assess his own body and his own
Yep.
brain.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think it's just such an important thing that as we're talking to our kids, and especially around this topic, that we are giving them an option to really recognize within their own bodies. And how can we do that if our day-to-day life doesn't change in any moments?
And I love the idea of a screen fast. Like that's it seems so wild to think about like you could actually do that in this day and age, but you
Yeah.
really can. You
Yeah.
really can. And like what does that look like? And what a strange place we live in where you're like, "Oh, I'm taking a screen fast."
I know, right? That those words come together. You're like, wait a second. And it was harder, obviously, for my husband and I. And like, my job is primarily on screens, right? So
Yeah.
we did have, like, here in my office was where I would record my podcasts and things like that, but I would turn it off, which oftentimes during the rest of the year I don't do. And my kids also they communicate a lot via screen, right? And so they did keep their watches so that they could talk to their friends and text in that way, but it wasn't the same as having something in their face all the time. And it's a little bit harder to be like, hey, and a little bit more obnoxious. You look a little James Bond like, right? When you're talking to your watch. And so it just made it where they really thought before they were acting, thought before they were speaking.
Yeah, that's a
So,
very fascinating concept. I love it.
well, thank you. Who knew where this was going to go? That's what I always say when we're doing these podcasts. Who knows where they're going to run? But let's dive in a little bit more to some of the coping skills that you have
come up with, right? So what is your process like when you're making these card decks? Is it that things that have worked for you, or is it things that you've worked for others? Like, what does that look like?
So whenever I'm trying to find new strategies, I am looking at strategies that have been, first of all, like evidence-based. So like,
Yeah,
has there been research done on it? Now that can't cross all barriers and boundaries. Like not all things have been examined in
right.
like a double-blind study. Like, but we know that mindfulness has, we know
Yes.
progressive muscle relaxation has, breathing, all those things. So I look for that. I also look for what has worked for my clients in the
Yeah.
past. What have they told me? So that is always like the most fascinating to me to hear. I will ask every single client that I see when starting from 20 plus years ago, what strategies work for you? What
Mhm.
works for you when you're feeling frustrated, when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling mad? So I take all that information and I sort of like make a mental note of it. And now I have like things online that make it easier for me to like say, oh, like I have this spreadsheet with all these strategies that I've heard of and used and clients have told me and I've been researching. So it really is trying to gather what works, hearing from my colleagues, hearing from my clients, what I try myself too. And I typically do try almost everything. So
Great.
I
Yeah.
like it because if I'm introducing a strategy to a child in a therapy session, I'm doing it with them. It's
Right.
really awkward to have somebody do a strategy and not do it with them. It's so weird. So
Watch
I
someone
do that.
deep breathe, and you're like,
Right. And you're like looking them in the eye and you're like, this is
and
so
breathing really
strange. No.
fast. This isn't gonna work.
No, it's not. Like I'm like, we're not making eye contact, but we're definitely deep breathing together.
Yeah.
So like I do try almost all of them. And if not, like it's stuff that I know has worked for other people, like multiple other people. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of vetting that goes through it, but part of it is just like it's fun. Like
Yeah.
it's I'm hearing like what deep breathing strategies work, and a little girl will tell me something, a teacher will tell me something that works. I'm like, that sounds great. Let's put
Yeah.
it in.
I love that. There's a lot of families that'll be like, you know what, we've tried and practiced all of these coping skills, and my child can, elevator breathe and she can breathe, blow all the bubbles at different times. But in that moment, if I'm like, you need to take a deep breath, not a chance is that kiddo gonna do it.
Yeah.
So, what advice do you have for these parents, like right in the moment?
So I would say, first of all, give yourself grace and remember that it is a marathon, not a sprint. So
Yeah.
the fact that they actually know the strategies is like half the battle. The
Mhm.
fact that they can actually name them and do them and know that that's something that they like is huge. So
Mhm.
don't discount that. It's a matter of helping them intervene sooner. So like if you're thinking about like when they're escalating, if you think
Mhm.
about it, it's like a little curve. If you can intervene like lower on the curve versus higher on the curve, you're more likely to get something to
Mhm.
happen. I actually also really like using visuals because a lot of times when kids are getting into that mode of like being overwhelmed, being in panic, being frustrated, they can't hear you. So I like using visuals and I
Mhm.
actually like practicing. So
Mhm.
like making a plan, like when you feel blank, this is a challenging time for you. When you are about to like spelling tests are challenging, going to bed is challenging,
Mhm.
dealing this particular friend is challenging. What are the strategies? Like, what are you feeling when you're doing this?
Mhm.
What strategies do you think will work? And then checking in after that situation happens. What worked? What didn't work? What can we try next time? So I always think about it like a game plan that is always kind of being modified and
Mhm.
made better and improved on time. And I actually do have a page where I'm like, this is the issue, this is the
Yeah.
feeling, this is the coping skills that we're going to try. And then like a little separate, different colored box, like what worked, what didn't work. Because
Mhm.
I want them to start to get to that pattern of like, I can make a plan when something hard is going to happen, and then I can do something about it. But visuals have been huge because it's really hard to hear when you
Right.
are overwhelmed. It's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And no one wants to try a whole bunch of new things in that moment, nor, you were talking about the amygdala before, like when you're in that like fight or flight where it's feels like an emergency,
Yeah.
then no, like that isn't the time to start something new. But I love how you're like, we can practice this at other times and make a plan of expectation.
Yes. And I always tell people when they are in fight, flight, or freeze, that is not a teachable moment.
Mhm.
Like that is when they are in panic, it is not the time to try and start to introduce like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding if they've
Yeah.
never heard it. Like it's not going to work. It's never like you practice when they're calm and it feels weird to do that, but
Mhm.
you can practice when they're calm so that they know what it feels like, they know what it looks like. And if you have that visual that they can refer to and be like, oh yeah, that's what I have to do. And it takes time, but I've seen over and over again, like when kids can actually do it. Like I have this one little girl, she's like, she struggled for actually like a couple of years. Like it's been a
Mhm.
really like, but she's gotten better and better over time. She's improved at school, she's improved at home. And she turned to her dad the other day and she's like, Dad, this deep breathing stuff really works when you get frustrated. And he's like, Yeah.
Yes. Yes, it does.
And I was like, that is the moment that I've been waiting for. That to like all the things that all the adults in her life are saying, like these are strategies you can use to help you when you're getting frustrated, when you're getting mad, and it can help you feel better. But she made that connection finally, and then she's like, oh, I'm good. And it's like it's been one. She's like, now I will then a little bit of success, and then
Yeah.
more success, and then more success. So it's been fun.
So if you have a kiddo that's like, this actually worked, but why? Like what are some reasons why these coping skills, especially let's just take deep breathing as an example. Like why does that work to help calm the body?
So it actually is something that comes along with your autonomic nervous system. So when you are just like resting and digesting, your body is breathing very deeply. Like if you're just watching Netflix and just relaxing, nothing's going on, your breathing is normal, your digestion is typical, like your muscles are relaxed. When you get into fight or flight, your muscles tense up, your digestion slows down, and your breathing gets shallow. It actually is sort of like a little body hack. That's just how I explain it to my teenagers. It's a body hack to take slow breaths because
Yeah.
it's telling your body to get back down to rest and digest. It's it's so cool to me that we can do that and it's not immediate. That's the other thing I always tell people. Like you taking 5 deep breaths is not going to get you out of fight, flight, or freeze back
Mhm.
down to rest and digest. That's like 10 to 20 minutes because your
Yeah.
body's there and it's going to take a little bit of time to get out of it, but keep doing some breaths, maybe take a walk, look in nature, take a drink of water, do some wall push-ups, do some jumping jacks, move yourself through that tough moment to get to this other side where you can be back down in a calmer place.
So you just stated like several coping skills at once. So is that common that like people will need to do more than one thing?
So for me, I have found it depends on the person. So some
Yeah.
people like really like there's like they do like one or two, like they do some deep breathing and a relaxation exercise. I have found that sometimes people like to layer. I am a layerer. So
Yeah.
like I'll do like I'm listening to something calming and I'm crocheting. So I like to like it and that really, especially for stress for me,
Yeah.
that helps me. Like I can't just crochet because then my brain's going and I can't just listen because my hands need to do something. So I layer.
Love that.
And then sometimes like you try something, it's not working. So you try
Hmm.
something different. Um,
Hmm.
especially for the like movers and shakers of the world. I'm like, get your body moving. Get your body moving.
Oh,
Jump.
this makes my OT heart so happy.
I'm like, do your jumping jacks, do some wall push-ups, do like what, like move your body, small or big movements, whatever's going to help you move that emotion through your body.
Mhm.
I used to actually have my son run around outside of our house, like just run around
Same.
the house,
Yep.
run. Just do a loop, do a few, just to get it out because
Yeah.
it's like so much energy in the body. Like sitting and doing relaxation,
Mhm.
it does not work for him. He
No.
needs to move his body and to recognize that about our kids, like knowing that like I have a student in front of me who needs to move and that is the way that's going to
Yeah.
help them settle themselves. And I know for some people that sounds weird, but like it does work. So
Yeah. 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 As an occupational therapist, I love that you've talked about like the occupation. Occupation is how we occupy our time. So how you've tried other things like crocheting, and running and movement, things like that. But that it's not just, I'm going to take a deep breath here, although that can be very helpful in, small excerpts, but how you're actually using other ways to occupy your time to then
also calm your nervous system. Like it's just so beautiful. Janine, thank you so much for being here and for sharing this wealth of knowledge. Can you tell people how they can find you and how they can find all of your resources?
Sure. If people want to go to copingskillsforkids.com, I have a ton of free resources on there. I have a whole page on deep breathing, on calming anxiety, dealing with stress, managing anger, and then just going through the different styles of coping. So, relaxation, distraction, sensory movement, and processing. So, lots of free resources on there if people want to just take a look and get some ideas. That's all I really want, is for people to figure out what's going to work for them and work for their kids.
Beautiful. If you have been around here for any amount of time, you've heard me say homeschooling is not alone schooling. As homeschool families, we have the privilege of building our own team to support our children. That's why I'm excited to share Pacific Preparatory. They partner with homeschool families to provide customized support that fits right into your plans. All of their teaching is live, one-on-one, and completely virtual, so your child can learn right from home on a schedule that works for you. Lessons are interest-driven and child-led, designed around each student's strengths, goals, and challenges. Some families use Pacific Preparatory for accredited courses, while others choose flexible, pay-as-you-go support for enrichment, tricky subjects, or when a child just needs that little extra boost for their unique learning style. With experienced, carefully vetted teachers tailoring every lesson, they fit seamlessly into your homeschool program. So visit www.pacificpreparatory.org to learn more. And remember, you are not in this alone. There's a team ready to help your child, and in specifically, the OT is always in. Thanks for being here.